Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy with Jason. Today, I have a very special episode. I get to talk with some friends about some really cool products and actually just some history. We're just going to have a lot of fun today. I have both Rob Varga and Vince Beretta from Insurance Insights / WALKAWay. Hey, guys, what's going on? How you doing?
How you doing, Jason?
I'm
Happy
doing
to be here.
Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun
great,
today.
Thanks.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I know it's interesting times right now. I think all of us are staring at our computers, trying to see if we're going to go through yet another lockdown. That's always fun. But hey, we're going to keep things positive. We're going to have fun with some great conversations. But hey, before we get started with the podcast, I always love starting these episodes with a little origin story because I'm always very fascinated to find out how people get started in this industry. So Rob, I'm going to start with you. And Vince, I'll ask you the same question. Rob, how did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
I graduated from the University of Guelph in December of 90 when GST was just introduced. A lot of my friends were in the industry already. They had gone to the Canadian Automotive Institute, now the Automotive Business School of Canada. Anyways, I started selling Mazdas. The dealership was new inside of a mall in my hometown of Burlington, and eventually, obviously learned a lot in that respect and became an F&I manager for both a Mazda store and a Saturn store that were in very close proximity to one another in the same dealer group. And then I eventually became a service manager at a Chevrolet's dealership, which I was completely unqualified to do, which is where I actually met Vince. He was one of our vendor reps. And I was a lease renewal manager there as well when that became quite popular. So I've kind of been in and out of the business over time. I've been in sporting goods as well, but I've been here now for almost 20 years since the inception of our company.
This is definitely one of those industries that once it's in your blood, man, you can't get this thing out. It doesn't matter if you're on the operations side or the vendor side. It's very difficult to get it out.
I call it the black hole.
Sometimes in a lot of cases, it's exactly what it is. Hey, Vince, for yourself, how did you get started in the automotive industry?
Well, I guess the short answer is that when my father was a car dealer, but the long answer was I got kicked out of the house when I was in high school. And when I decided to come back to home, my dad set me up with a couple of interviews for, selling men's suits and this and that to get a job because he wouldn't hire me himself unless I was the best person for the job at the time he had one open. That was his policy, which I thought, when looking back now, it's a pretty good policy. And so with that, he set me up with a sales interview at a car dealership as well, and I ended up selling cars at the age of 19. And so I got retail experience that way. I sold Chevrolets, Cadillac for Alec Connor's Easttown Chev in London, Ontario at the time. And there are people selling cars there today that I worked with then.
Wow, that's
so cool. Shout out to Duncan McCall.
Duncan, if you're listening, big shout out.
That's how I got in. And then I progressed into servicing dealers with F&I products for the Ontario Automobile Dealer Services, a division of the Ontario Automobile Dealer Association at the time. And that's where I cut my chops learning about the creditor insurance business. And so eventually leading into some entrepreneurial ideas that created what is now Insurance Insight WALKAWay.
You know what? I've kind of been following kind of WALKAWay's, I guess, kind of success over the years, but I think there may be a fair amount of people that are watching, listening right now, and don't necessarily know who you guys are and what you guys do. Rob, can you give us kind of that quick, that 30,000 foot view of what you guys do for the industry?
Well, Vince's brainchild is WALKAWay. He came up with the idea, and maybe he can go into more detail of how that happened. It's interesting. But we basically pioneered through Vince's original idea of vehicle return insurance that covers negative equity. Back, the trend in negative equity wasn't as prevalent as today, but it's grown over time. So effectively, we created the world's first vehicle return insurance that covers negative equity. And there are a number of other firsts as well. There's no pre-existing health exclusions. It's all ages. It's flat pricing. It covers a myriad of different life perils within one policy. But that's effectively what we do. And now we've expanded into some other products in niche private label stuff for OEMs and lenders. But our core, the mothership is vehicle return insurance.
I remember my first experience with you guys' product was in 2008. And I'll be honest with you. When I first heard about it, I was kind of like, that sounds a little too good to be true. And then just working with your guys' product at the multiple dealerships I worked at for the many years after that, it is an amazing product. Vince, I got a question for you though, because I'm super fascinated. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when this idea came to you and how it kind of all started. So give me an idea. Like, were you just kind of sitting around the kitchen table and it just kind of came to you? How did this start?
I'm gonna say that it started with my passion for being a professional. Mm-hmm. And when I say a passion for being a professional, I took it upon myself to read virtually every certificate of credit or insurance I could ever get my hands on, whether it be a bank product, credit card product, bank mortgage product, and of course, every automotive credit or insurance product that was available, I read. And so I got to understand the inner workings of how credit or insurance really worked, especially when I started to see the words go into action through a claim process, for example. So you'd get to see these words come alive when real life, real people hit the words with, a claim. And I started to get quite disgruntled with some aspects of the insurance, of how the policy was worded, how the policies are sold. And I addressed the problem through, this creative idea, having seen more and more people have trouble with their lease cars where they had negative equity. Mm-hmm. And, in a conversation with Michael Croxon, who is a successful car dealer in the GTA, he and I started talking about negative equity in the auto industry. And 2 days later, I kind of put an experience of knowing all this about the insurance business and now seeing this emerging trend. Michael himself had a couple of customers that needed help with their car, and Michael took them back. And he said, I'm not in the business to take cars back. And, what do you do? You've got customers that are good standing customers and, something's happened and I help them out, but that's something I can't do all the time. So I solved a problem in that. I literally woke up out of a light sleep and the old story, you're having a moment of light sleep. You're actually problem solving. There's times where you're putting things together and putting pieces of puzzles together. And I literally woke up, I sat bolt upright in bed. I grabbed a pen and a paper and started writing an idea down. And that's like literally, it was an aha moment like that. And the product that we sell today is the same product that I wrote down that day. And it has all the same values and principles. And I took away, and having designed the product, I took away all the challenges that we would have in the sales process. For example, pre-existing health exclusions, like the disclosure of pre-existing health exclusions is no longer required because we don't have any. Age limitation. I don't have to age discriminate against anyone. It's a very human usable policy. We see that in our claims processes, our online reviews of our products and programs. All of those things have all come together, and that aha moment, everything that happened in that time still exists and happens every day today. And it's been an amazing journey.
And what I think is that
was that aha moment. I was dissatisfied with what I saw.
And you're like,
there
this
was
is
a
not going to
problem
stand.
presented to me, and boom.
Jason, a little known fact is that the original name of WALKAWay was actually Consumer Gap Protection.
Oh, really? Okay, so
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I got to ask,
Our
how
first
did WALKAWay
brochure
come
was
about?
named Consumer Gap, and we used the word WALKAWay, and we trademarked it inside our brochure language.
That was
And
smart.
Consumer Gap, and like everyone in the car business will know what gap coverage, and it's like literally what we do is gap for humans. You have an accident in your life,
Yeah.
you know, you lose your job, you lose your health, you lose your business, you know, you have a disability, that sort of thing.
When we were in 2005, when we were, we did a U.S. license agreement with a company out of Dallas. We were at the NADA show in New Orleans, and we were trying to we had a booth, and we were trying to figure out how do we explain WALKAWay to all the typically American car dealers walking by. And we just said, hey, it's gap for people, and they got it right away. And by the way, it was,
I like that.
We were at that show, and it was very flattering because it was stated to us many times, the best thing we've seen at NADA in 25 years.
Because it's so buyer-centric. You know, I mean, I got to be honest with you, that was one of the first things when I first read the WALKAWay brochure. All right. That's what went through my head. I was like, this felt like it was built for the customer, not necessarily for the dealership.
100%.
And I think that's a good segue into kind of our first topic today, because I know that both of you guys are incredibly passionate around a buying process, not a sales process. And it makes sense because WALKAWay is such a buyer product, not a sales product. So let's get into this. When I say buyer process versus a sales process, what are your first kind of thoughts? Rob, I'll start with you, and then Vince, I'll ask you the same question.
I'll harken back to the basic principles that WALKAWay is built on. And I know this sounds corny, and I know we don't know each other very well, but I can honestly tell you that this product was built from the ground up around providing legitimate or even overwhelming consumer value first, making it a usable product that helps people. And then we thought, if it's as good as we think it is, then we'll got to find a way to make some money at it. Versus the opposite, how much money can we make with something by turning away as many claims as we can and making us rich? That is not how we approach this. And I can honestly say, after almost 20 years here, we do good work. We come to work every day. We help people. If we make a mistake, we own it, but we help a lot of people out. You can see the sign behind me. We're at about $120 million now of automotive debt relief over 20 plus years in business. That's a lot, helping a lot of Canadians out, never mind the other countries we've been in.
And you know what? It's that whole kind of methodology of let's put the buyer first that I think I've seen more of in the last 12 months than I probably have, honestly, in the last 20 years. So I'm actually excited. I hate to identify silver linings during times like this, but I have to admit, this is definitely a silver lining. And Vince, I'd love to kind of get your take on this. I mean, do you see kind of what's happened over to the last 12 months? Is our industry more prepared now for a buyer process versus a sales process?
Sorry to swear, but I fucking hope so. For us, when you think about back to our product, like we created a product for people, and we believe that if you treat people right, profits follow, and we've proven that over and over again.
Yes.
And it is about creating buyer processes at every stage of your business in the retail environment today. And I kind of cutting my chops with creditor insurance, and I did one-on-one kind of integrative training where I wasn't the guy standing at the front of the classroom and that was the glory job everyone wanted. I was the guy that had to do the role playing at the retail level and try to convince business managers to role play. It's kind of like, being a remote dentist. So, it was, but I loved doing it, and I didn't really. So, if I was training today, I would be training the buying process. And for me, the difference is that I would not be training a menu. I think menus in the F&I office today are satisfying just weak salespeople who, not to put anyone down, you're probably all really good at your job if you're an FSM and watching this. But I think if you're using a menu, you're insulting your customer, and I would be insulted. It's not hard to group a bunch of products together and put them in a menu and price them. That doesn't mean anything. I'd like you to get to know me. I'd like you to get to know what my financial situation is. You've got my credit application. You can ask a couple of other questions about my life and our goals, and and put something together for me that you're going to do based on your professionalism. And just as a challenge, I wonder how many business managers would be able to say, or dealers themselves, or general managers have actually read the certificates of the products they sell in their business office. And it's one of the most important product areas of your business. And if you don't know what you're selling, you can't create buyer processes.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, if the car dealers are out there going, I don't know what my credit or insurance looks like. I don't know what the terms and conditions are. I don't know what my customers face in a claim situation. I know that, some claims don't get paid, and maybe that works for me or it doesn't, but I don't know. And I don't know what my warranty is. I know it makes me money, but I don't know what it truly, how it's constructed and how it serves my customers. So if we don't know that information, everything is just a sales process. It's not a buyer's process, because we don't know our material intimately enough to make it match a customer's profile. And that's where I think the industry, once it becomes truly professional, when a business manager, and there are people out there like that.
There is 100%.
And we work with some of them today, but there's a whole host of F&I professionals that use the menu and really aren't asking the detailed questions and creating a bespoke experience based on their professionalism to translate to the customer that's in front of them. And that's a true buying process. And that's where I think, dealers need to be in all aspects of their department, whether it be service and parts and all the other aspects of the 5 departments of the business, with the exception maybe of wholesaling used cars.
Jason, one of the things Vince has said quite a bit is over the years is, if you truly believe and understand, if you truly understand what you're selling and you believe in what you're selling, you don't need a lot of training on how to sell it other than the product knowledge. It's
you don't need
just a conversation.
Yeah, you don't need a sales process. Your sales process comes by way of your professionalism.
No, look, I'm with you guys on this. I mean, I feel like the sales process was kind of our training wheels. Kind of as an industry, there was kind of a series of training wheels. I mean, I find same thing in the F&I with a menu. It's a great training wheel to get the person started and comfortable, but we have to fade away from that sales process and create a buying process. And that's putting the customer first. And, to your point, Vincent, you said it, look, dealerships have done this. I'm not going to say a lot, all right, but there are definitely a handful of dealerships that have done this and done it incredibly successful. And they're making money. I see. That's the thing I think as an industry is that we need to get away from, is this fear of stepping away from, taking those training wheels off. My son is 6 years old. He's kind of back and forth right now between training wheels and not training wheels. And I kind of feel like as the industry, we're kind of in that same boat. We're afraid to take these training wheels off because we're afraid that we're going to lose money. But you gentlemen have seen it the same way I have. That's not really true at all. So I guess my question, then I'm going to ask one more question about this and we'll kind of move on to our next topic. And Rob, I'll start with you and then Vince asks the same question is, I think there's a fair amount of people out there that may be watching and listening right now and shaking their heads and agreeing with us. They're like, yep. I agree with you guys. All right. But I'm not necessarily sure how to take those training wheels off. What's the first step to taking the training wheels off and getting away from a sales process and getting into a buyer's process? Rob, I'll get your thoughts on this, and then Vince, I'll ask you the same question.
One of the things that we have been an advocate of in terms of how we approach our people in the field. We call them BDMs, business development managers, is we part of our training process is to make sure that they go to great lengths to understand their dealer clients intimately.
Mm-hmm.
When you can understand your dealer clients intimately, and you can, you're doing more listening than talking, then you really get a good idea of what it is that's important to them. For example, we do annual meetings with them, and we ask them what their goals and objectives are and their challenges, and we review our business together. And that same logic should be applied to the consumer buying experience.
Like that.
As Vince briefly touched on, around investing the time to getting to know the customer, to getting to know what's important to them, their how long they keep their vehicle and all that kind of stuff. So you can customize a presentation for that person. There is no better feeling in buying something, in particular a big ticket item, than when someone really knows a lot about you and has invested that time. You feel good about it. You feel like you're making the right decision because this person took the time. So for me, it's the intimate knowledge of the relationship. I understand it's difficult in a turnover, but there's other ways of acquiring that information and being engaged with each sale.
Well, you have to process it, right? It's a good idea, but a good idea is only as good as how well it actually gets executed. So if we don't actually process that first step of listening more and talking less, which is great. It's funny that it's now that you say that, that's something that I think we've trained on and best practices for a long time, but we don't necessarily always do a great job of processing that into our efforts. I think it
could be something as simple as just asking your salespeople every day, what do you got in the hopper?
Yes.
Oh, I got Mr. Jones. Tell me about Mr. Jones.
Listening. Yeah. No, I like that. Hey, Vince, is there anything you would kind of like to add to that with dealerships that are looking to take those first steps to get away from a sales process and focus more on a buyer-centric buying process?
Yeah, I think that, needs analysis in the car business and, getting the buyer's needs and being able to sell features and benefits that are relatable to those needs have always been a part of our business. For me, I'm going to maybe pick on the F&I office a little bit.
That's cool.
It is our bread and butter, and that's where we make, where we make a lot of our income from, the support of really great business managers and great dealerships that do business with us. And even though we are parts of menus, I'd like to put out there for discussion purposes from an F&I perspective, if I'm doing something, I would want to be able to experience, what, a buying process and what that looks like and how do we create it and challenge ourselves to do that. And if I were to, go back to my old days of role playing, I would say, hey, Jason, thanks for your business. I'm really excited for your new car. I did take a look at your credit application. I want you to know that I've been in this business for 30 years. This dealership goes through an annual review process of every product that's in the marketplace, and we choose the best products for our customers as it relates to their financial and automotive protection that's available through this office. And I've been in the business 30 years, and I just want to ask a couple of other questions of you as it relates to your life and your lifestyle and blah blah. And I would pick these questions and ask these, that I'd have a series of questions that I would go to ask that would be meaningful to that custower. And then
I like that keyword, meaningful, though.
Meaningful, like say, what are your future plans with your real estate? Where are you looking to move? Are you looking, you're looking to plan family? How long do I see you've been in your last job for 13 years. Is this something that you're, looking to change in the future? Or are you going to be, staying static in that job and that role? How do you see a progression with your employer, or, what's happening in your life? And I'd want to build, how long are you looking to keep this car? You did roll in some, negative equity from your last. Do you understand what negative equity is? How it can affect your life? Okay. That I want to ask stuff like that and be able to pull questions from someone, and then say, based on what you've shared with me today, Jason, I've formulated a bit of a plan for you that I'd like to share as it relates to your automotive finance and protection needs.
I like that. I think the needs analysis is a lost art. All right. I mean, I think when I first started in the industry, it was an incredibly important part of my development and my success. But I feel like that art's been lost to the point now where it's just a series of checklists, right? It's just like I just need to check off the proverbial boxes and go check, check, check. And when I am doing a needs analysis, I'm not really doing a needs analysis for the buyer. I'm doing a needs analysis for myself so I can understand how I could actually move forward the sales process. So I'm with you on that. I just want to make sure that, when people are listening or watching right now, they understand this is a needs analysis for the customer.
That's right.
Not for you. And that's an entirely different approach. And I think, the reason that, I'm looking at the sales process, and I think one of the things that's done to our industry has generated a ton amount of negative equity. And I know you guys know a lot about this and how it's affected our industry. So I think this is a great segue kind of into our next topic is, that sales process, I feel, has over the last 10 years generated an obscene amount of negative equity, and it's affected our industries in ways that it just doesn't necessarily get me excited. All right. I don't think that, look, I remember when I first started presenting numbers to a customer, all right, it was 48 months with $10,000 down. Why? Because that's the proper way to buy a car, right? And then 60 months, okay, where we got off in offering 84, 96, balloon payments, all this crap was because we're focused more on the sales process and not the buying process. How do you guys see? I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this. And then Rob, I'll start with you, then Vincent, I'll jump down to you as well. Is negative equity, all right, and how that's affecting our industry now and I guess moving forward?
Negative equity is an epidemic or even a pandemic in and of itself, and it has been for a while. We have the pleasure or displeasure, I guess, of tracking all kinds of depressing statistics in our world and what you've seen over time. When I started selling cars, nobody leased. People who own their trade, they put it down on their new car, they financed it for 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And drove it for 8 or 9 or 10 or 12. And I think it's a combination right now of affordability. We have the highest level of consumer debt that we've ever had in our country. Historically, we're the most indebted country of G7 countries. So you have a consumer that is I want it now type consumer. There's far more choice. Vehicles are more expensive. They have less money to put down on cars because they're more highly leveraged. Canadians used to be a nation of savers. Now, for every dollar that we of disposable income, we owe over $1.70. So we're kind of a check to check type society now.
Yeah.
So the one thing that hasn't really changed over time, terms have gone higher, vehicles have gotten more expensive. There's less or low or no money down. But the monthly payment affordability has always kind of been fairly flat around the $5 to $6 or $6.50 a month. So you've got industry things at play, and you got consumer behavior things at play, and it's all rolled up in a kind of a ugly looking stew, which is negative equity, which is a problem because people are okay while they're working or able to work, but when their income is interrupted, people are in trouble very fast. And we've paid claims for, Kias to Lamborghinis, and it affects everybody.
I'm with you. I think how it's affected our industry is we've dug ourselves a hole that I'm not necessarily a smart enough person to figure out how we're going to dig ourselves out of it. I know that as an industry, if we lean more towards a buying process and less of a sales process, I think that's a start. But I think there's a long way to go. Vincent, I know you got some thoughts on this as well. So negative equity, how does it affect our industry now and moving forward?
Yeah, can I augment that question?
100%.
I am going to say, how does it affect the consumer?
Okay.
because truly that's what we're all about, right? I mean, we are about protecting the consumer, and this might seem like an unpopular thing to say from a business perspective, because we are in the business of protecting negative equity, and without negative equity, we wouldn't be in business, because we created products to shield consumers from negative equity. But Canadians are in general the car poorest people on the planet. We buy more car relative to our disposable income than anyone else. We finance them longer than any other country in the world. We finance. We roll over negative equity. With the negative equity in the auto finance book in Canada is probably the highest in the world. There is no other country that has, and no other individuals, consumers, and the industry book that have as much negative equity as the Canadian auto book does. And so if you break that down into individual consumers, we are carrying, massive amounts of negative equity, and it can be the number one net worth killer for Canadians. So, and we buy, how often do people buy new cars? Okay. Yeah. The average finance term is, I think now, Rob, 82 months?
Over 80, yeah.
82 months. The average person holds on to their new car purchase for 30, I think it's just, it's like 38 months.
Jeez.
They're not even halfway.
Nope.
And they're rolling. And that's like, so, hey, that's great for the business. We all earn, money from that cycle. We're all earning money from protecting negative equity. But if I'm advising you as from a buying process, and I'm a professional salesperson, I want to look after you. And I want to say to you, hey, Jason, you're turning this car in at 34 months. And you financed it. The last finance was 72. Now we're having to finance this much into your next contract. And I'm going to be transparent with you. And we're going to finance for 84 months. Yeah. Well, pal, I don't want to see you until month 66. Okay. Like, I don't want to see, come back, service, have a coffee. Love to see you again. But you better stay in this car, buddy. As an advice to you. So, how do we get out of this mess? We get out of this mess by treating customers properly and fairly and professionally, and saying, and if you need if you need an automotive solution, or your life changes, or you're making more money, or whatever, and I'm happy to call an audible, and you're doing better, but we're going to protect you first and foremost. We're going to put a gap policy or a walkaway policy, depending on what your goals are in your life, and think about that from end to end. You're going to have that discussion, and imagine that process where you have that discussion with a sales guy. He educates you, you're transparent, and you go into the business office and you go back to that buying process. And I know we're talking about negative equity, but that's how we solve it, is that, we educate people around what it is, how it can affect them, give them choices, allow them to make a transparent choice around what they're going to do with their own negative equity. And if they want to be careless or cavalier about it, you'll help them buy a car. We're never not going to say no.
Of course.
But I want you to know what the perils are on the downside. And, I'm not going to think you're stupid if you do it. If you buy, that's your choice. I just want you to be aware. And I think that awareness brings some change. I think that's a common element for change, is awareness. And that's how we'll do it. We'll never say no to selling a car, and we'll never say no to you if you want to finance it for 96 months for, $412. Go, fill your boots, but we have to tell the consumer about it.
It is. And look, I think dealerships do need to draw a line in the sand. And this is me. Look, this may not be the popular opinion, but I do believe we need to draw a line in the sand. I had to do this once at my own Mitsubishi dealership. I had a young gentleman in his maybe mid-late 20s, all right, had already gone through 3 different vehicles and was about to finance a $70,000 Mitsubishi Lancer. They don't make a $70,000 Mitsubishi Lancer. Maybe even Evo, but no, not even that. This was just a regular Lancer at $70,000. And I just had to draw a line in the sand and said, no. Like, I'm not going to sell this to you. We need to finish off at least another 27 to 32 months on what you currently have before we go and make this move. And you know what the funny thing was? Is that person referred more business to me. In fact, it was one of my number one. All right, when I write referral checks, I probably wrote more referral checks to that young man than anybody else out there. And that's just because I drew a line in the sand and I was honest and I was transparent and I wasn't willing to do it. Now, I hate to say it, but that's not always the case.
You created an enormous amount of trust and goodwill with that particular person.
Value.
Which will get you a customer for life.
And that's exactly what it was.
Fiercely loyal to you.
And in terms of, you know, I think that a lot of the car business think that that customers aren't loyal to the brand.
Yeah.
You might be right, but they're loyal to your people.
100%.
And if you're treated that way and you create an intimate connection with someone like that, and because that is raw and that you approached him with your heart, and you looked after him and you showed him care, and boom, like, and we're not going to be perfect. That's not going to happen all the time, but it can happen a lot with a lot of people. And Jason, that is exactly the buying process, the solving of the negative equity, and all those things. And you know, in part, the consumer is in part to blame, but you know, the auto industry, you know, we have a history. We're willing to do it. You know, but the consumer knows what they want.
Of course.
And, you know, the needs analysis, you talked about needs analysis. So like, I've already done my own needs analysis. I know what I want, need, And like, so that needs analysis kind of doesn't carry through right at the sales floor, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to happen at other places in the process. But that does happen in the sales process where, you know, you had control of that and said like, guy, I'm not selling you a car, but a sales guy's think about that. You own the dealership, or you were a general manager. I think you owned it, didn't you?
Yeah, I owned it.
And that is the right way to think, but hire a car sales guy that's going to think that way.
Well, and that's to your point, that's 100% right. So I actually had a process put in place after dealing with that gentleman. I realized that this had happened maybe a couple times and I wasn't even aware of it. All right. Because I was looking at deals going through. I wasn't necessarily looking at every single structure of a deal. So we actually made a process. It was it was a simple process in the sense of anytime anybody had anything remotely close to $10,000 in negative equity, it needed to be red flagged and sent over to me.
Yeah. Great policy. Yeah.
Just we so have that
dealers that do that. Yeah, dealers that I admire them for doing that.
Right.
They won't roll over any more than 10 or
at least have a conversation around it. I mean, I have had customers come in with situations like that where they have to, because of what's changed in their life or their job. They need to go into this another vehicle, but that was the point. The point was that there was a clearly defined process to put in place in there, so that if a customer ever came in like that, there was a flag sent. I was notified. I would actually have a one-on-one conversation, with the customer, just so that I could understand why they were in this position. But that's creating a buying process, not a sales process. So I mean. But we have to commit to it for it to ever happen. And to your point, Vince, you said this earlier. That's how we're going to get out of this negative equity thing. Is being serious about this. Not just saying like, hey, this is a good idea. No, we actually have to draw the line in the sand, create a process so that people can have real conversations about these things.
Or not. Like, or the problem's not going to go away.
100%.
Consumers are just going to know about it. Like, they're going to be well aware, and they're going to have an understanding of what they're doing and what the pitfalls are of doing what they're doing. So, and there are, and again, not to be self-serving, I would, if I'm, in that situation, I would be the type of guy that I am the type of guy. I have a 2016 Tahoe with 150,000 kilometers on it, and I'm going to drive it for another 4 years. So, that's just who I am, right? And, I got buddies in the car, but come on, Vinny, like, turn that car over and, like, let me get you a new, Escalade, do this. Like, I'm going, yeah, no. And that's just because that's the way I was taught from a financial perspective. But if consumers are going to want to do that, they should be also protected with the best that you can possibly find for the proper dollar, whether it comes to, from warranties. And it just goes to say, hey, maybe we need the fleet to get a little older and drive them a little longer and put more miles on them and fix them and buy warranties and, protect our finances and do all those things right and keep a car longer and do all those things. It would take one cycle, but everyone's going to be cycling at a different time.
That's
so
very true.
Eventually, I think the people in the car business, like everyone should be like you, Jason, where you identify that one time and you're going to have that one customer and you treat that one customer and say, you got to take a moment in your life and clear this negative equity in your car ownership. And then you move forward. Well, don't make the mistake again.
We make money though. That's what, if I was to sum up our entire podcast here, and it's because it's so in line with what we talked about. It's also so in line with what your guys' product is in the first place. Is it puts the customer first? All right, we put that customer first. We make money. Yeah, and I do. Yeah. I mean, I can stand at the top. Right, I can stand at the top of the building and yell as much as I can if I can just, if I can get this one idea into anybody out there watching and listening right now. And if you've been listening to the three of us talk, this is what it is you put that customer first, you will make money.
It's kind of like my wife says to me. She goes, you should think about what it's like to be on the other side of you sometimes, Rob.
Yeah.
And it honestly makes you stop and think how you're being received. So it's no different in the car business or in any business that you're in. Put yourself in the customer's shoes and really, truly be honest with yourself around what it is, what kind of experience you want, what kind of information you need to make an informed decision, and how you want to be treated. And there's lots of choice out there as it relates to buying a car.
There really is. And, I know it's the tail end of our time today, and I know we still have more topics to run over. I definitely think there's going to have to be a part 2 to this conversation because we just covered some amazing things. But you know what? But before I let you guys go, this conversation has just been a great conversation for the people out there that are watching and listening and would love to kind of continue this conversation with either one of you gentlemen. What is the best way to do so?
We have a great new corporate website at insuranceinsight.ca, and people have the ability to reach out via that in terms of contacting Vince or I. It'll definitely get to us, and we do actually get back to people. Also, check out my LinkedIn profile or Vince's LinkedIn profile or Insurance Insights LinkedIn profile, and we'd be private message us. We'd be happy to return the message.
Follow us on LinkedIn, Insurance Insight on LinkedIn, and Vincent Beretta and Robert Varga on LinkedIn. We'd happy to connect with anyone and everyone that reaches out that's interested.
I just updated my profile picture from about 15 years ago, so.
I noticed that actually, by the way. I noticed that.
So did I, Rob.
That's what happens when you guys do a podcast. People are going to now connect with you.
Your other picture was the deer in the headlight picture.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a ton of fun. You guys have yourself an amazing day.
Hey, thanks very much.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jason. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.